I want to thank Shay for that deeply personal and impassioned call to our offering and to action. Thank you, Shay. How was your summer? Can you believe it's essentially over? I know it's only the beginning of August. I know it's hot. But here in Atlanta, we hit the ground running at the beginning of August. Back to school is solidly upon us. And so for many of us, summer is solidly in the rear view. We're taking stock of June and July, and we're wondering where the time went. We are tallying hours spent shepherding kiddos to day camp and sleepaway camp, and perhaps some of us are even eagerly awaiting that return to routine. We are grateful for pockets of rest, for adventures here and there, and perhaps somewhere in there for time for a few deep breaths. Yeah, I heard that. That's good. We're going to do more of that. We are celebrating the deadline we met, and we are kicking ourselves for leaving those other things to the last minute because now that minute is upon us. So we are back to school, and we are back to church, and we are back to work, and perhaps as ready as you are for the routine again, if you are anything like me, there might also be a twinge of, not just yet. I didn't get to do what I was supposed to do. I didn't relax enough. I'm not restored enough. I'm not rested enough. You fill in the R word that applies to you. My daughter, Sora, who you met this morning again, asked yesterday what I was preaching on this morning. Rest, I told her. Now, Sora has a love-hate relationship with taking a rest, which is often resisted mightily and powerfully, and then slipped into like the cooling waters of a summer pool, and she sleeps for hours. This conversation happened as she awoke from one of those delicious, much-resisted sleeps. She thought about what I said for a moment, and then she asked, "Are you going to talk about how important rest is for your body?" I hid my surprise and delight at her question, and I do have her permission to tell you this story. "Well, yes," I said, "I am." And so this morning, I would like to open space for us to reflect on rest, on how important it is for our bodies and our minds and our spirits. I want us to think about how elusive rest can be and why, and to consider a systems approach to enabling more rest in our collective lives, as well as an individual practice approach that just might inspire us to give our sweet, overworked nervous systems moments of rest and respite. The truth is that we live in a society that, like my child, also has a love-hate relationship with rest. We want it, we resist it, we relish it, we neglect it. And we know deep in our bones that we need it. Rest, the self-proclaimed nap bishop, theologian Tricia Hersey, proclaims, saved my life. Rest saved my life, she says. And indeed, she has made it her mission to share the salvific power of rest with her community and with the world. In her 2022 manifesto, Rest is Resistance, she roots her work in Black theology and the reclamation of the power and liberation of Black bodies. While she is particularly concerned with rest and restoration for Black women and Black people as a whole, she reminds all of her readers that each and every one of us is beholden to capitalism, is beholden to white supremacy, and is beholden to what she calls the legacy of exhaustion on which our nation was built. It's an incredibly powerful book. If you haven't read it, Rest is Resistance. Our collective rest, Hersey says, will not be easy, All of culture, she says, is collaborating for us not to rest. But rest, she says, is a healing portal to our deepest selves. Rest is care. Rest is radical. Rest is radical. And it is elusive for so many of us for myriad reasons. We have work commitments. We have family responsibilities. We have volunteer commitments. We have caregiving duties. A loved one can't be left alone. Or we don't want to be left alone with our thoughts sometimes. Perhaps we work a second or even a third job in order to make rent. Or maybe we're so ambitious and driven that rest of any sort feels like failure. Hersey acknowledges and honors all of this. For her, however, rest is not a luxury. It is not reserved only for those who can afford regular spa days or full-time childcare. Rest, in her view, is required for everyone. Rest is essential for our survival and our ability to thrive. The reframing of rest like this offers us inspiration and invitation into what I'm going to call the radical economy of rest. So I invite you now to call to mind a moment of rest for yourself, a time when you felt truly and deeply restored and rested, when your mind was full of dreams or daydreams and your heart was free. Do you have a moment like that in mind? Maybe it's a recent memory, maybe it's from a long time ago, but you have something. Now let me ask you this. Who and what made that moment possible? Did someone care for children for a few hours? Or even overnight? Did it require asking your employer for some time off? Did you turn off your phone? Did you draw a boundary around your email? Did a coworker fill in for you, perhaps? Or did you or someone else make an investment in your well-being? Rest, like most things of value in our lives, takes a village. This summer, our 12-year-old goddaughter came to visit us from Portland, Oregon. You've heard me speak of her before and of her father, Sam, our dear friend who passed away when our girls were babies. And this year, our goddaughter came by herself to stay with us for a week on her own. She and our eldest daughter, Arden, went to day camp, and we spent evenings together at the pool. And I think she truly enjoyed both her independence and being embedded with us, and we're kind of a lot, embedded with us for the week. And for the first time in years, her mother got a getaway. In the middle of the week, she sent us a photo of herself kayaking on the Deschutes River. And I have to tell you, that look of relaxation and restoration in her face brought tears to my eyes then, and it brings them to my eyes now. What an honor it was for our family to be able to support theirs in this way that was so much needed by both mother and child. Now, did my spouse Anthony and I need some rest after the week was over? We sure did. And when it was our turn, we leaned on each other and on family and friends to make that possible. This is just one example of the radical economy of rest, a trade and barter economy of love and care where we collectively make possible the rest that each one of us needs and deserves. It is an economy of individuals and families, of neighbors and schools, and congregational communities like this one. Now, friends, I feel like I can kind of hear your internal dialogue now. Perhaps you are thinking something of the order of, that's all well and good, Megan. But you said yourself we hit the ground running here. Not only is it back to school and church, it's back to the ballot box, and boy, do we have work to do. Also, Megan, How can we rest in a time like this? This time of war and existential threat to democracy as the waters rise and we dread what lies ahead for future generations. Perhaps we might feel too anxious to rest, too anxious to be, as the poet says, idle, too anxious to feel in any way blessed. But what if we found ways to try? This past spring, one of my students at Woodward Academy reminded me of a powerful biblical verse from St. Paul in his letter to the Philippians. Do not be anxious about anything, Paul writes to the churchgoers in the ancient Greek city of Philippi. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Do not be anxious about anything. These words stuck with me. This verse is so deeply comforting to so many people, my student included. It's a reminder to give over the anxiety of life to one's higher power, to surrender it, to let it go. And for me, what resonated most was the idea that St. Paul had to tell those folks in that place, in that time, not to be anxious because they were anxious. They were just like us. Just like the people to whom Paul was writing nearly 2,000 years ago, we are worriers. They were worriers. We are ruminators, and they were ruminators. We all, in the past and in the present, we think about what could happen. We think about what will happen. We think about what did happen. And boy, this summer, those of us who worry about global technological meltdowns or massive political upheaval or the real and present danger of threats to democracy or human suffering and expanding war in the Middle East, didn't we ever get to tell you, I told you so? The truth is there is plenty about which to be anxious, always, every day, every day. The British statesman Joseph Chamberlain said in a speech in 1898, I think you will all agree that we are living in most interesting times. He said, I never remember myself a time in which our history was so full, in which day by day brought us new objects of interest, and let me say also new objects for anxiety. Now, I'm not sure there is any era of human history that has not felt that way for the people living through it, right? And I think you will all agree that the times we are living in are most interesting. They are full of amazing discoveries and all manner of exciting things and plenty of new objects for anxiety. We look out into our world and we see conflict. We see a literal fight for the future of our nation. Wars being fought on multiple fronts around the globe, and people locked in existential battles for survival that reverberate around the planet and affect many of us directly. Our nation is a nation divided, with forces actively working to tear people apart, to pit them against one another, and we feel caught or torn or entrenched. Understanding and unity and empathy for another's perspective are not only hard to come by, they are considered dangerous by those who seek to divide us. And now, in the midst of all of this, we return to work and to school and to church, and we buy backpacks and we fill them with what our kiddos need for a day away from us, and we get up in the morning and we make breakfast and we pack lunches and we respond to that urgent email and we leave the nagging ones for later and we write the report and we reconcile the data and we show up for the meeting and we clean the house and we prepare the presentation and we care for other people's children and we stare down the months ahead and we steel ourselves for what is coming. But sometimes doesn't it feel like the world should just stop spinning, if only for a moment? For all of us, for all the people on the planet to pause and to rest. Perhaps even to, as we have done multiple times this morning, to take a collective deep breath. And here's the secret, which is not so secret. That is exactly what our time here this morning together is for. So let's try it again. I will invite you in just a moment if breathing is comfortable for you today. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not the best thing. And if it's not the best thing for you, I'm going to give you some other options for that centering, right? Another option is to feel your feet on the floor, like in the story. I feel my feet on the ground. You can even press them into the floor to feel them more intently. Or you can focus on the sensation of your hands folded in your lap. You can even press one hand into the other. Or you can take that deep breath in and out. So let's take another moment now together to center ourselves, to breathe deeply or to choose one of those other grounding practices. Are you ready? Oh, should we do it one more time? Let's do it again. How do you feel? I'm eager to hear. Relaxed, a lower heart rate, you could even feel it. You feel present, calm, I love that. Grounded, still, nice. You know, we breathe, we inhale and we exhale about 22,000 times a day without even thinking about it. And when we do think about it, when we stop and we take a few deep breaths like we just did, 1 or 2 or even 3, or when we turn our attention to those different physical sensations like pressing our feet into the floor or our fingers pressed together, our hands pressed together, we can help activate our parasympathetic nervous system. It does slow our heart rate. You might know that this parasympathetic nervous system is the system in our body that counteracts the fight, flight, or freeze response in stressful situations. Fight, flight, or freeze is our survival instinct. It has kept our species alive all these millions of years. So thank you, sympathetic nervous system. Thank you. You are what told our cave-dwelling ancestors to run from saber-toothed tigers, to keep away from poisonous snakes, and yes, eventually to fear other people. That sympathetic nervous system is the same system in our body that is activated anytime we feel stressed or threatened. Not by a saber-toothed tiger anymore, hopefully, but by a conversation with our boss, or by that form that we forgot to fill out that pops up in our email, or by a fight with our spouse. It is the same system that takes hold when we are activated by stories from overseas, or we listen to politicians who threaten our most fundamental rights, or when we encounter a microaggression or fear in any way for our safety. When our sympathetic nervous system is activated, our heart beats faster, and we breathe faster, and our pupils dilate, and our stomach even stops digesting food. We are prepared to fight, to run, or to hide. All our body systems are go. They feel as though our very survival is on the line, and their first order of business is to keep us alive. So we thank them. And then when we stop, when we pause in a moment like that and we take a deep breath, or we ground ourselves with the sensations of touch or another centering practice, perhaps we say a prayer or a mantra like, I am peace. When we stop and when we pause, we signal to our body that we are fundamentally okay. We are not going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. They don't exist. It's true. It's true. But our body doesn't know that. Our body doesn't know that. Our body is like, where is the saber-toothed tiger? And when we stop and we take a breath, we say, they don't exist anymore. You don't have to worry about it. It's okay. We can rest. We can digest. We can feel. We can breathe. And then we can choose how we respond rather than reacting. Look, life is stressful, right? Summer, let's be honest, it is also stressful for many of us. Fall is stressful without a national election, without this national election, but it is happening, folks. And so this year, we are going to need as many moments of respite as we can find so as to keep our heads in the game, to keep our feet on the pavement and our eyes on the prize. We've got less than 100 days to go, and there is work to do. But here's the thing. We won't finish this marathon if we don't give ourselves space to rest along the way. We can get swept up in the anxiety of everything that is swirling around us, or we can choose to respond rather than react. We can take a breath, we can ground ourselves and let go, even if just for a moment, let go of what came before and what will come after, and just for that moment, we can let that peace that passes understanding infuse our bodies and our minds and our spirits. And when we forget to do this, or when we forget how to do this, look around. We have a community of worship and practice to remind us. We are headed into a season that will try and test us. There will be moments of joy and delight in the weeks and months to come, and yes, there will be stress and anxiety. Let us meet that stress with skill and perseverance, with the knowledge that each of us holds within us the capacity to pause, to take a breath, to center ourselves, to rest in the moment, to find our peace. As we close, let me say once again, each of us deserves this kind of rest and restoration. Tricia Hersey reminds us that rest, even the rest that comes in just a moment of pause, that rest, she says, is a form of resistance. It is a way to reclaim our humanity in a world determined to erase it. You are enough, she writes. You can rest. You must resist anything that doesn't center your divinity as a human being, she says, because you are worthy of care. My friends, I want you to really, really hear these words. You are enough. You are worthy of care. And you can rest.
Amen.